I remember when we finally signed with the two lawyers and me and my wife at the time, and final signature. I came home and it was this big. Finally, after all those years, it was a big weight that kind of lifted on my shoulder, and all of a sudden it was like, okay, I'm not better off than before. Let's say money wise or whatever had to happen, but at least things were set, and I knew where I was going now.
Can you
And
describe that moment? That moment that you just you said that I was like almost free.
yeah, like I said, it's the funniest, it's the strangest moment because I think it's probably the first time I felt that way. Uh, like I said, it was a tough time, and to get the signature and everything, and like I should have not necessarily be happy because really it wasn't better than what we had discussed initially.
Mm-hmm.
But just the fact that it was done and that I could move on, and I just felt like I don't know, some freedom at this point. Now that those things were set, I could actually start thinking about myself as well, which I guess during those years was more thinking about everything, like taking care of two lives, taking care of the two kids times two lives, and so I was actually uh, yeah. So myself, I mean, I wasn't thinking about myself at that time. There was no time for that, even job wise and everything else. It was so focused on that I couldn't think about anything else. So that day, finally, I felt that this was done, and I could at least look forward and start thinking about myself. So what do I do now? Now it's settled. I know exactly where it's gonna be for the next years, and what do I do from now? So it was a feeling. Yeah, I compare it. It's a bit. It might be a bit strange and funny, but I almost compare it a little bit as, you're in a bad relationship with a bad girlfriend, and at one point you want to break up, but when you're younger, and so it doesn't happen. But the day that you actually break up, you just like that feeling of, okay, now I'm free, and it's another story starting. So it was really that way. So. Um, I remember like calling my parents, and again, it wasn't a divorce, but it was such a big step that I called my parents, my friends, and like, okay, now at least, I was happy for that. My parents were telling me I was crazy that I signed that, but at the same time, it was done, so I was happy enough for that. So, so,
Does it
uh,
get to the
so
point where you're just like, you know what, I just want it to be over. I need closure, and that's why you signed it?
that was it. Because at one point, you can keep fighting,
Mm-hmm.
and you can go in court and in front of judges and things like that, but. Um, Again, I think, and I always say it too, nobody wins at the end. And it's just a question of how long you want to fight and how long can you fight as well. Because again, I always had a decent job. So, but in that situation, you're bleeding money from everywhere for everything, for lawyers, for the mediation, for all the papers, and the two, like I said, the two apartment and everything else. So, at one point, yeah, I got to the point where it's not what I wanted really exactly, but yeah, you can see it at the end, because if not, there's no point. I mean, at the end of the day, you'll get into a even worse space than you were before. I think so. So that's what I wanted. I didn't care. Just wanted it to be over, and move on. So that was yeah. So that was the key moment, I guess, in all this. So even more important than the divorce papers, actually, it's a different feeling. But the agreement, when that was signed, yeah, that was a very happy moment.
So I want to take you back to when you were talking about with the kids. So there
Yeah.
you are, you're telling the kids, and you're getting the reaction of them that they already knew.
Hmm.
What would you do differently with what you know now with kids?
Um,
And tell us the age of your kids now and the age of your kids when back in the day.
so my kids are 18 and 14. So I would say like 14, maybe five. It was probably around 10, I guess, when we announced it to them, 9 or 10. And my daughter, yeah, about 5 years ago, so 13. So they were younger, and I think what people don't realize, including me, I didn't realize that. I mean, but what we don't realize is that, I mean, kids are very smart, and sometimes we kind of underestimate a bit what they see, what they think, and how they react as well. So, and that's the was the biggest revelation for me is they understood, they saw it, they told me what I would have done differently. Probably. I would have probably done it before because, like a lot of people, right, you stay in a relationship for kids often, and I realized after this, and even over the years, and the past couple of years, and even talking to people and talking to some kids as well, and that it doesn't help kids to kind of drag that on for them, you know, and they want most of the time seeing their parents happy, and that's what I realize. And and you put them there sometimes as an excuse because you don't want to go forward, maybe, or maybe you're scared or whatever. But really, the kids are, I mean, kids adapt to anything, and we see it. I mean, not only with relationship at school and lives and what's happening now in the world and everything else. I mean, they adapt to everything. So I think if I would do something different, is probably have the discussion. Probably I've done it a bit earlier and have the discussion with them as well, and probably be a less. Um, I wouldn't say. I mean, I was scared to tell them, but I think having a more maybe honest discussion and starting to a point where, knowing that they've seen what's happening, they've been living with us, so it's not like it was a surprise.
Does parenting change when you're living together while you're going through the process, and then the kids, I guess, do they use it to their advantage? Do they play you guys against each other, or do you have a mutual agreement with your soon to be ex that's like, we're still parents, like that's first and foremost?
You mean once before once we stay when we stay together after we announced it,
Yeah,
or?
because once you announce it,
Yeah,
you're still in
yeah.
the process, but I
Hmm.
mean, it's officially like, all right, we're
Yeah.
separated, like we're going down
Hmm.
this path. But the parenting is not the same because there's no
No.
two people together now. It's two people that are separate living together. And you,
Yeah, and it's I mean, as if I look at my kids, I mean, that wasn't really an issue. We still continued as we were,
Mhm,
but obviously, I mean, parents have are usually they have different style of parenting, and when we're together, well, we try to kind of, we kind of make concessions and kind of say, you know what, we parent together. For that time, after that, it didn't change much. I think it changed once I got my own place and we were to physical space. During the time that we were there, after telling them, I think there was always the thing is by staying home, there's always hope that maybe we'll go back
mhm.
or that things will work out at the end. I think really the point is when you decide to leave, that's where, or you find a new place and you sign the lease and everything else. Now it becomes more real, and even for the kids, so they realize that. So I think that's where they start playing you more than, if I can use the word playing, but I think that's where they change a bit, and the parenting becomes a bit more difficult. And because I mean, there's two parents now, but before they were working together, and you try to work together, but if you're not in the same location, if you don't do the same activities, if you don't do the same thing, it's very difficult. If we want to plan an activity, you don't have to call your other spouse, say, I want to plan this and this and that. So that's when it starts really to be different. And that's where you see the two parenting styles kind of coming out now, because you become two families in a way with one parent, and it's just, here it's my decisions and there it's her decisions. So as opposed to before was both our decisions, it was compromise a bit between the two and an agreement. And
What did you learn about that parenting process?
yeah. What did I learn? Well, I learned a lot of things because definitely also did. I mean, when you chew, you chew. Whatever you say, it can be the best situation. There's another pair of hands. There's a lot of things that you you can count on the other person to do most of the time, both ways. And when you're a single parent now, is just counting on you pretty much. So that changes the way you parent to a little bit changes. But I think the kids know. They know, again, like I said, they know more than we think. So they know how to deal with dad, and they know how to deal with mom, and they know how dad is and how mom is. And like you asked before, that's where they start trying to use that against you. So,
Especially at that
so
age.
especially at that age,
Yeah.
yes, they're younger, so they realize that, and you at the same time you feel guilty. I mean, obviously, I didn't mention that before. The agreement, and when we sign, I was happy and everything else, but there's always guilt that stays there, because at the end of the day, you're the one that decided to split up and you caused this. So there's always that guilt. So when you become one parent with the two, when you have your kids, it's always that guilt there too. So the kids, I think, sense that a little bit too. So they might use that at their advantage sometimes too. Uh, but uh, but I mean, I was lucky. I have to say that part's been really going well on that front. So I didn't really have much of an issue. My son decided to come and live full time with me because I guess there was a bit more frictions on with his mom, and yeah. So my daughter was going still back and forth until before COVID. So now even a bit, it's a bit different. Like if I go back a bit, initially was let's say a week. So you have your kids during that week. It's you focus on your kids during that week, which when you were together before you didn't necessarily do because everything goes and there's a routine and everything else. So now you try to enjoy your time you have it because when you don't have it, you sit there and you kind of miss them and you want to see them. So so I ended up obviously when the kids were there, that's where you try to do a bunch of stuff. So that's how you change the parenting again. You try to keep the same way you were before, but feeling a bit guilty and looking at how things go, I think I changed a little bit on my side. Um, and eventually the kids came to me full time, and that was a um, that was definitely more difficult because again you're not used to it because you were always with someone else dealing with the kids, and now all of a sudden you're by yourself and you have to think about everything. And I know there's some people, and even married, it's the same situation. I know married couples that it's one of them that do everything and the other one doesn't do much. So I'm sure married people still experience that. But yeah, that's the biggest part.
That's a wrap on another episode of Divorce the First 6 Months. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more insights. Take care.